Hi everyone, and welcome to our live session on Job Hunting Manager. We're live on LinkedIn, so I will give a time everyone to join simply. Today we'll talk about why experienced candidates can have strong skills, relevant experience, and a solid CV, but still receive fewer interview invitations than expected. Very often, the issue is not lack of experience or competence. It is a career goal that is too broad, not realistic enough, or not clearly translated into a strong value proposition. In other words, the market may not immediately understand where you fit, what value you bring, and why you should be considered for a specific role. So today we'll focus on two foundations of an effective job search: defining a realistic goal and building a clear USP, meaning your unique selling proposition. But while we wait, I will briefly introduce myself as usual. My name is Maria Bożek and I am career consultant and trainer at Career Angels. Together with our team, I help European professionals, managers, and executives navigate complex job searches and manage their careers. I also recruit and train our team of consultants to ensure quality across all client work. Now, a few words about who we Career Angels are. Since 2010, we've supported almost 30,000 individuals in their job search and career decisions. Since 2020 alone, over 48,000 people have participated in our webinars and events. We also collaborate with top business schools. We deliver custom programs for executives and HR teams, and even co-created postgraduate degrees on career advisory. And this is very important. Our advice is based on real data, not guesswork. We analyze job market KPIs in 80 countries, which you will be able to see in a few moments. We track LinkedIn algorithm changes and over 26,000 reactions from headhunters and decision makers, which are your target audience if you're a manager or a senior manager. We also use insights from our Job Hunting Report, which is based on our client cases and which gives us a very clear picture of how the market has changed and what this means for experienced candidates. Everything is backed by more than 40 years of research or career management, and you will also have a chance to get to know more about it today. So what I hope is clear to see right now: when we say something works, it's because the numbers, client cases, and market observations point in the same direction. And that direction is clear. The market has definitely changed. But before we dive into the content, two quick notes. Definitely please take your own notes during the session because only a summary of the presentation will be made available afterwards. And at the end, we'll have a Q&A session, so feel free to write your questions in the comment section in the meantime. If you prefer not to have your full name visible under the event, feel free to send me a direct message as well. At the end of the session, of today's session, I will try to answer all your questions. If for some reason I miss your question, I will make sure to follow up afterwards. And before we talk about realistic career goals and USP, we need to understand the environment in which candidates are making career decisions today. Because a career goal that seemed realistic 3-5 years ago may not be equally realistic now. And the value proposition that worked in a faster and more candidate-driven markets may not be strong enough in a slower and more cautious one. So let's begin with the demand. Here we look at the number of job ads on LinkedIn across selected countries. It is not the whole market, but it gives us one useful indicator of visible job market activity. And what we see is that the market is very uneven. In total, the number of visible job ads in this comparison is around 70% lower than in week 13 of 2020. At the same time, some smaller markets show a strong increase compared to 2020. for example, Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania. But similar large European markets show a significant drop. Germany is down by almost 74%, sorry, France by almost 75%, and Poland by almost 64%. So the market is not simply good or bad. The point is that the market depends on the country, industry, function, and seniority level. And one more thing is very important here. LinkedIn shows only the visible market. It does not show all opportunities, especially at senior and executive level. That is why job ads are still important, of course, but they cannot be the only channel used for your job search, and we will, of course, discuss it later. According to the World Economic Forum, the next years will bring strong growth in roles connected to AI, sustainability, and digital transformation. This probably doesn't surprise anyone. But this does not mean that every candidate needs to become a technology specialist. But it does mean that companies are looking for people who can show adaptability, digital skills, and a learning mindset. So if your experience connects with these trends, it can become your strategic advantage for sure. But it needs to be clearly visible across your communication and application documents. On the other side, roles that rely on manual, repetitive, or easily automated tasks are shrinking. This includes administrative functions, some finance-related roles, and roles connected to data entry. These tasks are increasingly outsourced, offshored, or automated. If your background is close to these areas, it does not mean that your experience has no value, but it may mean that you need to rethink your positioning and show more strategic value or simply reskill. Of course, technology is one of the main drivers behind these shifts. Companies are adopting AI, cloud computing, big data, digital platforms, and automation. So companies are not only hiring differently, they are also thinking differently. So your job goal has to reflect this new reality. If you can show digital competence, whether through experience, tools, or certificates, it can make a huge difference. But again, it all has to be put into a wider context of the role you are targeting. Let's now discuss how COVID influenced the situation. It did not change how we work. It accelerated changes that were already happening. Hybrid work, remote collaboration, and digital processes are now standard in many industries. This matters because many candidates are still job searching as if the market worked like it did in 2018. But companies are hiring with today's market in mind. They are more cautious, they verify more, they compare candidates more carefully because they have simply who to choose from. And this is why clarity matters so much. So given the entire context, where do we start? With a job search strategy built around four essential elements. And the first one is not your CV. It is your job goal. Your goal needs to be clear, specific, and realistic. In uncertain times, we recommend choosing the path of least resistance. What does it mean? If a company is looking for a specific set of competencies, they usually want someone who is a direct match. We call this plug-and-play candidate. This means someone who can join, get started quickly, and require minimal training. When recruiters or HR teams are involved, they often compare candidates in a very practical way. They look for apples-to-apples comparisons. If you're not a close match, you may not make the cut. So when defining your goal and positioning yourself, ask yourself, do I need to look like an apple or an orange? And if the market is looking for an orange while my experience looks like an apple, how do I present myself in a way that makes sense for that target? At least enough to be considered in the recruitment process. So once your goal is defined, everything builds around it. A complete modern job search strategy includes four elements: a well-defined job goal, a unique selling proposition, your USP, that proves your value, two tailored CVs and an optimized LinkedIn profile, and the strategic use of all job hunting channels. This is important because in today's market, you cannot really pick and choose anymore. Let's now briefly review the four channels. Networking means activating and expanding your professional relationships to get referrals, insights, and access to roles that are not publicly advertised. Direct approach means identifying companies that fit your goals and proactively contacting decision makers with a tailored message, even if no job ad has been posted. Headhunters stands for executive search recruitment firms that are contracted by companies to source candidates for specific roles, usually those very senior and strategic ones. And job ads, so roles published on job boards, LinkedIn, and company pages. Each channel plays a distinct role, but used together they form a complete and proactive job search strategy. And until recently, accepted job offers could still be described as coming from four separate channels that we've just discussed. This view was useful because it showed which channels generated best results over time. But it also had one limitation: it made the channels look independent. And that assumption is becoming less and less accurate in today's world. This is why we should not look at the old channel data in isolation anymore. The numbers still matter, but the way successful job searches happen has changed. The question is no longer only which channel works best, but how do I make these channels support each other? And in 2025, we saw that successful job searches often happen through a combination of channels. The strongest pattern was direct approach supported by networking. Another important pattern was job ads supported by networking and direct approach at the same time. So yes, it meant that successful candidates approached one single opportunity via three different channels. Executive search firms also remained important for certain roles as a standalone channel, and job ads still mattered, and yes, even for international executives. So the point is not that one channel disappeared or stopped working. The point is that the channels started to work more like a system. And this brings us to the main takeaway. The new job market requires a multi-touch outreach strategy. This means that a job ad can be an entry point, but it often needs to be supported by networking, direct contact, follow-up, and a clear value message. In other words, applying is often only the first step, but visibility, context, and follow-up matter just as much. And this is why the job search process is much more demanding right now. You need a clear goal, a USP, strong documents, and an optimized LinkedIn profile, and you need to use all job search channels as a system. The point is not only use more channels, the point is to make them support each other. And this is especially important in an employer's market where companies are more selective and candidates need to communicate their value more clearly. And today, as mentioned before, we focus on the first two foundations of the successful job search process: defining a realistic job goal and building a USP. In the next sessions, we'll go deeper into the remaining parts of the process. On July 24th, we'll focus on CV, LinkedIn, and ATS optimization. On August 28th, we'll focus on contacting headhunters, decision makers, and networking strategically. And on September 25th, we'll focus on preparing for interviews both online and online. So today's session is the foundation. If the goal is unclear or the USP is weak, the rest of the process becomes much harder. And let's now start with the first foundation, so realistic goal setting. This is where many job searches become longer than expected. Not because the candidate is weak, but because the target is too broad, too ambitious for the current markets. To understand how long job search strategy may take, we need to look at the complexity of the change you are aiming for. In a candidate's market, a standard job search often took around 3 to 4 months. In an employer's market, it is closer to 6 months. And by standard, I mean a role that aligns closely with your experience, skills, function, industry, and level. In other words, a move where the market can quickly understand why you are a fit. For medium complexity changes, the timeline is longer. In a candidate's market, this type of search often took around 4 to 6 months. In an employer's market, it may take around 9 months. A medium complexity search usually means that one important element changes. For example, you stay in the same function, but you change industry. Difficult transitions take the longest, usually around 12 to 24 months. This can mean a change of industry and function at the same time, a move to another country without prior local experience or language skills, or a career direction where the candidate does not yet have enough proof for credibility. This does not mean that transition is impossible, but it does mean that the strategy needs to be better planned and prepared beforehand. And let's now look at a few real examples so you can exercise how to establish if your goal is standard, medium, or difficult. We have a candidate who has a master's in architecture. He's currently studying executive MBA. He has 5 years of experience as an architect. His goal is to become a startup consultant. Would you say this is a standard, medium, or difficult job search complexity? I'll give you a few seconds just to, think about it in your head. This would most likely be medium to difficult. Why? Because the candidate is moving away from the current professional identity into a new type of role. The executive MBA definitely helps, but it does not automatically create credibility as a consultant. We would need to see more evidence, business projects, advisory experience, startup experience, exposure, relevant tools, results, or a strong network in that environment. Without that, the market may not immediately understand why this person should be considered. Now we have a second example. Masters in economics and business. 20 years of experience, where we have 15 years in corporations, including 10 at C-level, and 5 years of being self-employed. Since 2021, this person was actually self-employed. The goal is to find a job in a corporation. Is this a plug-and-play move or a more complex shift? This is very difficult, not necessarily because the person lacks skills. The challenge is perception. The longer someone has been self-employed, especially after senior corporate roles, the more questions employers may ask. Will this person adapt back into a corporate structure? Will they accept reporting lines? Will they stay? Will they expect too much freedom? It is how the market interprets the experience. Let's now slightly rephrase the previous example. The same person has 15 years of experience in corporations, including 10 years at C-level, and since 2021, this person has delivered successful project-based advisory to management boards. Goal: find a role in or with a corporation as an advisor or external consultant. How does this change things? Now it becomes standard to medium, but closer to medium. The positioning is definitely clearer. The experience sounds more structured and intentional. The candidate is no longer presented only as someone who left corporate life and now wants to return. They are presented as someone who has been advising management boards and wants to continue in a similar advisory direction. This shows how much positioning influences perceived job search complexity. Now we have a candidate that has a degree in psychology, 7 years of experience with HR departments, is currently an HR business partner, and wants to become an HR business partner or HR manager. What would you say? Standard, medium, or difficult? This is actually a very standard transition. It is a natural progression within the same function. The experience is relevant, the target is close to the current profile, and the market can understand the connection quickly. Of course, the candidate still needs a strong CV, LinkedIn profile, and interview preparation, but from the market logic perspective, this is a realistic next step. Next example, a candidate has a degree in marketing, 11 years of experience with marketing departments, is now a marketing manager and wants to be another marketing manager role. This might seem standard, but here's the trick. In many markets, marketing roles are highly competitive. Marketing is also often considered as a cost center, especially in uncertain times. So if the profile is very general without a niche or specific added value, this can become medium to even difficult despite being a lateral move. This title alone is not enough. The candidate needs to show what kind of marketing problems they solve, in what context, and with what impact. Now take the same person and add proven experience in e-commerce and skills in digital marketing, social media, and analytics. And now we are closer to standard to medium. Why? Because the positioning is aligned with higher demand areas. E-commerce, digitalization, social media, analytics, and online growth are easier for the markets to connect with current business needs. So again, the same person can become easier or harder to place depending on how clearly the target and value are defined. Let's now summarize what we've seen so far. Difficult transitions usually include a change of industry or country without prior experience or language skills. Medium transitions often include high competition, for example, in marketing or HR. Standard transitions are usually plug and play, especially when the candidate has skills relevant for today's market, such as digitalization, restructuring, change management, optimization, leadership, e-commerce, analytical skills, or IT tools. This is your benchmark. Treat it like that way. Use it to assess how much time and effort your job search may realistically require. And here's what really makes the difference: how you position yourself. You might have a difficult profile, but if you present it clearly and back it with the right evidence, you can make it more competitive. At the same time, even a strong candidate can be rejected if the story is vague or unfocused. Positioning is your power tool, and what you're able to prove is what counts. And this brings us to the recommendations. This part applies to all candidates, but especially to those with medium to difficult job goals. Here's our golden rule: evidence equals credibility. It's not enough to say you're strategic, results driven, or innovative. You need to prove it with numbers, outcomes, and concrete projects. And keep in mind, part of the interview happens before you even speak to anyone. People first see your CV, your LinkedIn profile, and your online presence, and they already make some decisions and assumptions based on that. So what counts as a professional evidence? Certificates from recognized platforms can help: LinkedIn Learning, Coursera, Udemy, and similar sources. But certificates alone are not enough. You also need documented achievements: projects, client impact, budget effects, cost savings, process improvements, team results. Ideally, express your projects and successes tangibly year by year. The more measurable, the better. Numbers speak louder than adjectives. Okay, let's now switch gears. So far, we have looked at the market side of realistic goal, what the market is likely to understand, accept, and reward. But realistic career goal is not only about the market, it is also about you. That is why we now move to career management theory. Whether you are setting your goal voluntarily or someone else made that decision for you, it is a good moment to reflect on your career so far and decide what comes next. About 40 years ago, a company called Decision Dynamics asked themselves, why do people manage their careers so differently? Why do some people stay in one field and for their entire lives and aim to become top experts? Why do others move from company to company every few years? And why are there people who even before finishing university already know they want to become CEOs within 10 to 15 years? And to explore this, they conducted a huge study analyzing over 1 million careers over 40 years. And they discovered that there are four main career patterns: expert, linear, spiral, and transitory. And that at those patterns we can look from two different perspectives: career concepts and career motives. Career concepts describe how we see a successful career. It's the direction of movement and duration of stay in one field. In other words, what we actually do. Experts, ideally this person wants to stay in the same field for life. At events, they'll introduce themselves with their profession. Hi, I am a lawyer, I am an accountant. Their identity is closely tied to their role. Linears are all about upward movement. Better company, title, higher salary, more prestige. The length of stay in one field varies, as long as it helps them advance. Spirals change roles every 5 to 10 years, but within related areas. And when I always describe this example, I use an example of my colleague Anna. You know her from Career Angels. She studied psychology, worked in a recruitment for 7 years, then moved into internal HR from senior specialist to HR director, and then she moved into career consulting. As you can see, all is related, all within the broader HR field. And transitories change jobs every 2 to 4 years, often to completely unrelated areas. It is a pattern without the pattern. And years ago, some people would have said that it didn't count as a career at all. Today, fortunately, we know better. Career motives, on the contrary, are the underlying drivers, what gives us satisfaction at work. It's what we love to be doing. Experts are driven by expertise and security. They enjoy improving quality and working with professionalism. Linears are motivated by power, achievement, hierarchy, and compensation. Spirals seek personal growth, creativity, and teamwork. And transitories thrive on variety, independence, mobility, and fast learning. When you heard about these patterns, some of you might probably thought that's totally me. You might have also had reactions like transitory sounds unserious or expert sounds boring. But this story is not about judgment, it's about awareness. And you can reflect on your own profile on your own or take the test. The test results show two sets of data. Blue bars stand for career concepts, so what your mind considers the right career path. This is influenced by upbringing, education, and societal expectations. Red bars stand for career motives, so what your heart truly wants and finds satisfying. In this example, the blue bars indicate a combination of two preferences: advancement and developing competences. This suggests that the person sees an ideal career in something like general management, where both progress and growth are important. The red bars, the heart, match the blue bars, the mind. This is what we aim for: alignment between career concepts and career motives. When your heart and your mind agree on what your career should look like, you get clarity, satisfaction, and engagement. But how many people do you think actually have this alignment between career concepts and motives? I'll give you a few seconds. The data shows that only 36% of professionals are aligned. That means 64% are not. And it doesn't mean that those 64% are completely unhappy. They could be more fulfilled. There's still a lot of misalignment and disengagement. Imagine being in a company where 64% of employees are not using their full potential. That's a huge waste of talent and energy. Let's now look at two common examples of misalignment. The first example, the blue bars might say, I want to advance, I want to climb the corporate ladder, I want to develop further my competencies. But the red bars, the heart say, I want to be an expert. There's no desire to manage a team. Spiral and transitory motives are missing. This could be a technical person, maybe a lawyer or programmer. Let's assume it's a programmer. Now imagine this person's manager says, you're doing great, you are our best programmer, let's promote you to a team leader. Will this person say yes? Probably. Their mind says, it's a good career move, let's do it. Will they want to say yes? Probably not really. Their heart says, please just let me code. Now, this doesn't mean they'll automatically fail in a leadership role. No, they might learn the skills, build habits, even become a solid manager, but it won't be deeply satisfying at the end of the day. Next, we have the good news, bad news pattern. The mind says, I want to develop broadly and advance eventually. But the heart says, I want everything: stability, recognition, money, creativity, variety, personal development, freedom. So a bit from all patterns. This is someone who's good at many things, a kind of a renaissance profile. The good news, they are talented, enthusiastic, and can thrive in different roles. The bad news, sooner or later, they'll feel like something is missing. And most jobs can only fulfill two or three of their many needs, rarely more. One client described this like this. I feel like I'm not at a crossroads, but in the front of a roundabout with 10 exits, and I don't know which one to take. And to make it even more complex, there is the mind, the heart, the CV, and the job market. So once you combine all these layers, it gets really complicated. Sometimes the answer isn't changing jobs, it's changing something in the job. And this is where job crafting comes in. When somebody tells us, I want to change job, our first question is why. And sometimes just something little is missing. So we go back and say, where's the discrepancy? What is missing? Are you managing people that you don't want to be managing? Maybe you need to go back to your organization and say, listen, I don't want to be a manager anymore. Maybe it's not that you need a little bit more variety, so maybe you can engage in different projects within your organization. So one solution here is definitely job crafting. The other one, a very common one, is a combination of job crafting. What can I get out of my job versus what can I make up for what can I make up for in my free time? For example, your organization doesn't allow to develop your expert competencies and leave your expert pattern. Start an expert blog. Your organization doesn't allow for transitory, for variety, independence, and autonomy. Those are people who usually do lots of sports, traveling, arts for in their free time, or they do simply volunteering. And as you've seen, most people have primary and secondary patterns. That gives us even more insight into what roles might fit. When we combine patterns, we can draw conclusions about career paths. Expert plus linear means functional manager. Expert plus spiral, general consultant. Expert and transitory, freelancer. Linear and spiral, general manager. Linear and transitory, independent business owner. And spiral plus transitory, entrepreneur. Knowing your profile helps you save time and avoid applying for roles that don't match who you truly are. And I know it can be overwhelming. There are so many possible paths. Sometimes more than one direction is realistic. Sometimes more than one offer looks attractive. And sometimes the problem is not lack of options, but too many options at the same time. That is why we need a way to compare them more objectively. And when choosing between options, create a decision matrix. Ask yourself, what are my must-haves? What are only nice-to-haves? Which nice-to-haves are attractive but distracting? What matters most for me now, not in theory, but in this stage of my career? This helps reduce emotional decision-making and makes comparison easier. And we've created an exercise to help you with this, the value and parameter bidding tool. It helps you compare career directions or job offers based on your real priorities, not someone else's. We've also recorded a short video that explains how to use the tool step by step. And you will find a link to the video in the comment section under this live session. And if you still don't know what direction fits you, this is actually very normal. Career decisions can be complex, especially for experienced professionals, managers, and executives, because there is often more than one possible path. And you can also use additional tools to learn more about yourself. For example, you can use MBTI or 16 personalities, Clifton Strengths, formerly Gallup Strengths Finder, and of course the career view by Decision Dynamics. Each gives a different lens on your personality, motivation, and how you operate best at work. They are especially useful when narrowing down options or clarifying your strengths. You'll find all the links to these tests in the comment section of this live session. You can also reach out to us if you would like help interpreting the results or applying them to your strategy. All of these tools can help you clarify direction, but once the direction is clearer, the next question is, how do you communicate your value to the market? And that brings us back to the job search strategy and to your USP, unique selling proposition. So far, we've covered how to define realistic job goals, how to assess the job search timelines and complexity, and how to align your career motives with your direction. Now we are moving to your USP. And your USP answers the question, why are you the best candidate for this type of role? And more specifically, why should you be invited, remembered, shortlisted, and selected? And most people confuse long list and short list arguments. A long list argument answers the question, why should I be invited to be part of a recruitment process? In other words, do I meet the basic criteria? Do I have the right functions, seniority, industry background, language skills, tools, or general experience? Long list arguments are of course important, but they are not enough. Short list arguments are different. They answer the question, why should I be top 3 candidate? Why should the recruiter, headhunter, decision maker remember me rather than other candidates with a similar background? This is where USP becomes important. At senior level, many candidates have a good experience, but the question is not only are you qualified, but what makes your experience more relevant, more valuable, and convincing for this specific role. And let's walk through an example. Imagine an interviewer asks a finance director candidate, why should our company hire you? The first candidate says, because I am a reliable, a good manager, and I am loyal. Unfortunately, that's the worst possible yet fairly common answer. And descriptive adjectives won't work. This is something that a student might have said. At this level, recruiters need more than promises. They need evidence. The second candidate would say, because I have more than 10 years of experience in finance, I am a good manager and I work in international companies. This is definitely better, but still not enough. This is a standard answer given by most candidates. It shows the recruiter or hiring manager why you qualify to be part of the recruitment process, but not why you should be hired or at least shortlisted. And in a competitive process, that's not enough. Candidate number 3. Because I co-authored and delivered 2 restructuring projects in the last 3 years. In each of my last 3 roles, I identified savings of up to €500,000. I also reduced unwanted rotation in the finance department from 23% to 0% within 6 months of taking over. Now, this is the best possible answer that the fewest candidates give. It gives the executive search consultant or HR department arguments to put you forth on the shortlist or even attach a recommendation for hiring you and not the other candidates. So how do you get to your own USP? Start by listing products, achievements, types of clients, tools used, teams led, budgets managed, languages spoken, international exposure, certification, volunteer or board roles, and then look for patterns. What skills were necessary to arrive at those achievements? What type of business problem do you repeatedly solve? What do people usually trust you with? Where do you create measurable value? Then look outside. Research your competition on LinkedIn. What kind of professional qualifications, education, achievements, publication, tools, industries, and keywords do they highlight? Compare that with your own profile. Talk to someone who knows you professionally, former colleagues, mentors, direct bosses. And if possible, ask a friendly recruiter or even 2 or 3 recruiters. Sometimes other people see patterns in your experience faster than we do. Your USP is usually discovered by looking carefully at evidence and patterns. And once you define your USP, the next question is where do you show it? The answer is whenever someone decides whether you are relevant enough to continue the conversation. In your profile summary on your CV and LinkedIn. In your cover email when contacting headhunters, decision makers, your network. And during interviews, especially at the beginning, because the first part of the conversation often shapes the rest of the interview. We will go deeper into these touch points in the next sessions. But for today, remember this. Your USP should not stay in your notes. It needs to become visible in the way you present yourself. And if you want to improve your profile summary, we recommend our blog How to Write a Profile Summary that actually works for you. We will share the link to this blog post in the comment section. And final comments before we move to the closing session. First, upskill or reskill immediately where it makes sense. And by that, I also mean basic digital readiness. Be familiar with Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and Google Meet. Make sure you know how to join interviews smoothly, how you look on camera, and how your sound works. Second, don't wait. Don't delay gathering your evidence, clarifying your goal, and building your USP. And third, remember evidence equals credibility. The clearer and more concrete your proof is, the easier it is for the market to understand your value. And let's now talk about what happens after today. In the coming months, we'll continue covering different stages of the job search process during our LinkedIn Live events. Today, we focused on defining a realistic job goal and USP. In the next sessions, we'll look at CV, LinkedIn, and ATS optimization, contacting headhunters and decision makers, and networking strategically, and preparing for interviews. All of these events are backed by reactions from over 26,000 professionals and 16 years of insight. So if today's session helped you understand why your job search may not be working as expected, the next sessions will help you go deeper into specific parts of the process. Our next session will be Job Hunting Manager, CV, and LinkedIn that increase number of interviews. It will take place on 24th of July and 11:30 Central European Summer Time. We'll focus on how to make your CV and LinkedIn profile clearly show your value, pass the first screening more effectively, and increase your chances of being invited to interviews. To register, simply click Attend in our LinkedIn event. You'll find the link to the event in the comment section. If you would like to receive access to the presentation or summary from today's live session, please fill out the form shared in the comments. Once registered, you will receive access to the materials. To stay updated, follow Career Angels on LinkedIn. That way you will be the first to receive updates about upcoming events. You'll find the link in the comments. And after today, you can choose the next step that fits your situation, join the next LinkedIn Live events and go deeper into selected parts of the process. You can explore our blog and use our free tools to build your own strategy, and you can request a free career consultation. Whichever path you choose, the goal is the same. Make your next career step clearer, your value more visible, and your job search more intentional. As I mentioned, you can book a free 20 to 30-minute consultation with me or one of our experts. Simply send me an email to maria.bozak@careerangels.eu. Use the subject Career Consultation/Job Hunting Manager and include your CV or link to your profile and a short note about what you would like to discuss. During the conversation, we can talk about your current job search strategy, how to improve your CV or LinkedIn profile, and to prepare you shortly, within 30 minutes, to your upcoming meetings. In other words, you bring the topic and we will bring the advice. If you think our know-how and tips are of value, follow our content. You can find Career Angels on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Links to all those free platforms will be shared in the comment section. And of course, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Just search for Maria Bożek or scan the QR code. You can also find the direct link to my profile in the comment section. I am always happy to stay in touch and continue the conversation in there. Okay, let's now move to the Q&A session. I will check the comment section and of course I will check my messages, direct messages if any comments appeared. Okay. Maya and Katarzyna, thank you for joining us today. No direct message yet. I'll give you a few additional moments. If no question arises in the time, we will wrap up. Please remember that you can feel free to send me a direct message afterwards, get in touch directly for the career consultation. I will be more than happy to provide quick advice afterwards. One last check for my direct messages. Okay, it looks like Okay, so we have a question. Do you see any kind of resume builder for creating CV? Um, Unfortunately, I don't have any tool to recommend because when we work with our clients, we create every single CV from scratch. We don't use any templates because every individual situation of our clients, individual situation requires an individual approach. Yeah, because we need to always consider individual situation target positioning in relevance to the target role. Yeah, so we don't work on any templates and CV builders. We every time create it from scratch. But what I can say, if you are in international, I mean senior manager, my recommendation would be to stick rather to kind of standard format, very plain one, because sooner or later your CV will land on a desk of a CV of a busy executive, and the more illegible the document is, the more non-standard it is. It will be harder for them to look for important information to read your value. So definitely make it very legible and rather plain and standard. Of course, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't use any color. Of course, everything within reason. You can use the color. One last time, that is the direct messages. Okay, it seems like there are no other questions. Just to follow up to my answer, feel free to join my next session on July 24th, because we will, on that session, we will actually discuss how to prepare effective CVs and LinkedIn profiles, of course. Okay, as I said, if you didn't manage to send your question in the meantime, feel free to send it afterwards. I will follow up. And thank you very much for joining today's session. We hope you are living with more clarity, structure, and motivation to make your next step. See you next time.